Perfect aim. Captured point C. Point B captured. Point A captured. Point B is under attack. Point A is under attack. Perfect aim. Lost. Double elimination. Perfect aim. The enemy captured point C. Eliminations. Triple elimination. Merciless. Domination. Merciless. Point B captured. Point A captured. Nice. Perfect aim. Domination. Under attack. Bang. Point B captured. Point B is under attack. Perfect aim. Incredible. Point double elimination. Perfect aim. Perfect aim. Point C. Point A is under attack. Perfect aim. Domination. Point A is under attack. Perfect aim. Point A captured. The enemy captured. Perfect aim. Point A is under attack. B. Perfect aim. The enemy captured point B. The enemy captured point B. Point A is under attack. Point A lost. Point B captured. Bang. The enemy captured point A. Perfect aim. Domination. Perfect aim. The enemy captured point C is under attack. Point C is under attack. Point C lost. Perfect aim. The enemy captured point C is under attack. Point B lost. Nice. Point B is under attack. Point B captured. Perfect aim. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Triple elimination. Perfect aim. Domination. Eliminations 4 at once. Perfect aim. Point C is under attack. Point C is lost. Bang. Perfect aim. Point C. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Perfect aim. Incredible. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Point A is under attack. Blade Master. Domination. Point A is under attack. Point A captured. Point B is under attack. Nice. Perfect aim. Perfect aim. Eliminations. Perfect aim. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Awesome. Perfect aim. Domination. Incredible. Perfect aim. Domination. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Bang. 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 You rock. Elimination. Double elimination. Triple elimination. Perfect aim. Nice. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Triple elimination. Perfect aim. Point A is under attack. Point A lost. The enemy captured Point A. Nice. Point A captured. Elimination streak. Point A is under attack. Lost. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Triple elimination. Perfect aim. Point A captured. Point A is under attack. Domination. Point A captured. Incredible. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Domination. Perfect aim. Perfect aim. Point A is under attack. Point A is under attack. Point A lost. Domination. Insane. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Domination. Point A is under attack. Point A captured. Point A is under attack. Point A is under attack. Point A. Blade Master. Perfect aim. Point A captured. Incredible. Bang. Perfect aim. Perfect aim. Elimination. Perfect aim. Domination. Domination. Perfect aim. Point B is under attack. Point B lost. Point C lost. The enemy captured Point B. Perfect aim. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Point C. Point B captured. Point C. Perfect aim. Point C lost. Elimination streak. Perfect aim. Domination. Point B is under attack. Point B is under attack. Point A captured. Point B lost. Perfect aim. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Point B is under attack. Point B is under attack. Point B is under attack. Point B lost. Nice. Perfect aim. Nice. Point B captured. Perfect aim. Point A is under attack. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Point B is under attack. Elimination streak. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Domination. Triple elimination. Domination. Point C. Perfect aim. Domination. Incredible. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Nice. Perfect aim. Bang. Bang. Nice. Elimination streak. Perfect aim. Domination. Perfect aim. Perfect aim. Domination. Incredible. Perfect aim. Domination. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Perfect aim. Insane. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Domination. Domination. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Point A is under attack. Point A lost. Perfect aim. Double elimination. Merciless. Perfect aim. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Assist. Point A is under attack. Perfect aim. Point A captured. Point A is elimination. Perfect A domination. Point A lost. Point A captured. Perfect aim. Point A is under attack. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Captured. Perfect aim. Elimination. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Triple elimination. Merciless. Point A is under attack. Point A is under attack. Point A lost. Nice. Perfect A domination. Perfect A domination. Point A is under attack. Point A is under attack. Lost. Perfect A domination. Double elimination. Merciless. Triple elimination. Perfect aim. Elimination 4 at once. Perfect aim. Perfect aim. Point A is under attack. Point A is under attack. Point A lost. The enemy captured point A. Domination. Double elimination. Point A captured. Perfect A domination. Elimination. Double elimination. Perfect aim. Point A is under attack. Nice.